Things seem to be going from bad to worse for Matt Gaetz with a major new update here. Now, we all know that the reason that Matt Gaetz resigned from Congress was to bury the ethics report set to be released against him, operating under this pretense that the House Ethics Committee only has jurisdiction over its members in the House, and so, in theory, Gaetz resigning would immediately remove him from the House's jurisdiction and therefore immediately render the investigation moot. Well, turns out that's not exactly the case.
There is precedent for the House and Senate Ethics Committees to not only continue investigations, but also release findings after a member resigns in scandal. And I know you've talked about this. There's Representative Eric Massa, where the committee kept investigating him for sexually inappropriate behavior after he resigned from Congress. And the Senate Ethics Committee also publicly released its report into Senator John Ensign days after his resignation. And that was even forwarded to the DOJ. So while we keep talking about this Gaetz report possibly being leaked, could it just be released under the right amount of pressure?
And in fact, Amy Klobuchar picked up on that point too.
Well, first of all, this has happened a number of times with a Republican senator when he left for the good of the public. The report was released, and a Democrat in the House of Representatives once left, and the report was released after. So that's not true. These reports have been released.
There is literally precedent for releasing the report. And so now, not only is it common sense to release this report, given the fact that Gaetz was nominated for Attorney General and the Senate has a vested interest in being able to vet him, but there's actually no reason that the House should bury it at all. It's not only the obvious thing to do, but there is precedent to do it. And to that point, plenty of Republicans seem to agree. Here are just a few from the U.S. Senate where he would need near unanimity if he's to be confirmed.
What we want to do is make good decisions based upon all the relevant facts and information that we can get.
I think there should not be any limitation on the Senate Judiciary Committee's investigation, including whatever the House Ethics Committee has generated.
So you want to see it?
Absolutely.
And in fact, even Fox News seems to be faltering on Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, the overwhelming majority of his picks will sail through because they were Grand Slam picks. But to Molly's point, you don't root out corruption at the Department of Justice by picking a corrupt person to lead it. So Matt Gaetz, either the report comes out and he's not going to be the Attorney General, or the report doesn't come out and he's not going to be the Attorney General. I mean, the problem, Brett, is all the good picks, John Lee Ratcliffe, Elise Stefanik, Lee Zeldin, Mike Waltz, all the good picks, nobody's talking about those right now. They're talking about this wild card pick of someone who had to get out of the House to avoid being sanctioned by the House Ethics Committee. That dumbfounding pick is just sucking the oxygen out of all the good ones he made.
Now, with all of that said, let's not be Pollyanna about the reality of our political environment here. Here is a pretty effective microcosm for today's GOP.
There's no question he's the leader of our party. So now he's got a mission statement, his mission, and his goals and objectives, whatever that is, we need to embrace it. All of it. Every single word. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet high and scratch your head, we all jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads. That's it.
If I were to scientifically engineer a caricature of a Republican official in a lab to showcase to the nth degree how embarrassingly servile to Trump his party could be, it still would not be as bad as Troy Nehls. Troy Nehls is literally a bigger sycophant than what I could imagine the world's biggest Trump sycophant would look like. Now, while Troy Nehls saying this might be expected, considering Troy Nehls is more infatuated with Donald Trump than a 10-year-old girl is with Harry Styles, it's certainly not just Troy Nehls. Mike Johnson today decided that suddenly the House Ethics Committee shouldn't release a report that may or may not outline the potential next Attorney General of the United States engaging in sexual misconduct with a minor.
I'm going to strongly request the Ethics Committee not to issue a report, because that is not the way we do things in the House, and I think that would be a terrible precedent.
I think that would be a terrible precedent to set. Yeah, wouldn't want to set that precedent where Americans know whether or not the Attorney General had sex with a 17-year-old. Think of how dangerous that precedent we'd be setting is if we prevented that from happening. That's certainly the kind of thing we'd want to keep under wraps, right, Republicans? Right? Party that spent the last decade calling everybody on the left pedophiles? Right? All of those Pizzagate conspiracy theorists who decided that Hillary was some international trafficking kingpin because she was purportedly hiding kids in the basement of a pizza place that literally had no basement? That is how committed to the bit those people were. And yet now, when faced with the imminent prospect of someone who may actually have done all the things they pretended that the Democrats did, well, we couldn't possibly have that. Won't somebody think about the precedent that this would set? And of course, the worst people in government agree. Here's Jim Jordan.
And Congressman Jordan, do you have any sense about what will happen with that House ethics report that was supposed to come out Friday? Remember, Gaetz had been accused of things and no prosecution had been continued. It had been dropped. But Dick Durbin's trying to get his hands on that report, obviously, to leak it out to hurt President Trump. What is your sense on that?
Well, it's my understanding that is not supposed to go public. So if it's not supposed to under the rules, it shouldn't go public. And what I know about Matt Gaetz is one of the best members we had on our committee. In my time in Congress, which has been a while, I don't know, there are very few people who have the cross-examination skills he does. And I want someone in the Justice Department who's not going to say moms and dads at school board meeting needs to be investigated. I want someone at the Justice Department who's going to say it's wrong for the FBI to do a memorandum and say that pro-life Catholics are extremists. I want someone at the Justice Department who can tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, who put cocaine at the White House, instead of all the other stuff they seem to be focused on.
Wow, you mean to tell me that Jim Jordan is in favor of ignoring alleged sexual misconduct? You don't say. Scott Perry joined in, saying the Ethics Committee is not a judicial body, there's not due process there, it's just a committee. Mr. Gaetz is apparently no longer in Congress anymore, so it seems to me that's nobody's business. Ah yes, no due process, suggesting that the House Ethics Committee is just one more partisan institution. Only, small problem, it is literally led by Republicans. Representative Eric Burleson, a Freedom Caucus member, noted the swamp in this town unanimously does not like Gaetz and said that releasing the report at this point would be only for revenge or spite. He said it would be inappropriate if it came out, whether by leak or if shared with the Senate Judiciary Committee. Yeah, that's what would be inappropriate. The leak. Not the prospect of having a sexual deviant ascend to the Attorney General spot. Nothing inappropriate there. But a leak? Someone find me my smelling salts. Tim Burchett said, I could care less. The Biden Justice Department threw that out, and the people that literally hate Matt Gaetz's guts threw it out. Why are we even talking about it? How about that? Look who's taking their cues from the Biden DOJ. Suddenly, Republicans are no longer worried about Biden's weaponized Justice Department so long as they can point to it to help their own narrative. But, in fairness, that's a decent point. Why should we trust the Ethics Committee has something legitimate if Gaetz wasn't even charged by Biden's own DOJ? Here's my Legal Breakdown co-host Glenn Kirshner explaining that point. Does the DOJ ever not indict even if a crime has been committed? Because they opted not to indict him. Meanwhile, the House Ethics Committee, which, by the way, is led by Republicans, obviously felt so strongly that there was something to work with here that they kept this investigation going, and now we are seeing reporting that there is a highly damaging report set to be released, and so there's something there even as far as his own party is concerned. And so what would explain the lack of definitive action by the DOJ?
A couple of things, Brian. You know, it's not unusual. Take it from a 30-year career prosecutor. Crimes are committed quite often, and there is never a charge brought. Sometimes the crimes aren't solved. We don't know who the perpetrator is. Sometimes we have strong evidence of who the perpetrator is. However, we don't have enough admissible evidence in court to actually secure an indictment. Sometimes we have enough to secure an indictment, but we don't believe we have a reasonable likelihood of success on the merits. In other words, a guilty verdict at trial. So there is this sliding scale, and the evidence moves up as you make your way through the criminal justice process. This is from a prosecutor's perspective. So, he may very well have committed crimes. Indeed, what we know is that a federal judge ruled there was probable cause that Matt Gaetz had evidence of crime on his cell phone, in his cell phone, and it was seized and it was searched. But there were some potential witness problems, is what I have heard over the years in the case, and the Department of Justice couldn't quite get to a point where they believed they had proof beyond a reasonable doubt such that they could win a conviction at trial. Not unusual in my experience that cases fall out along that sliding scale of evidence before they ever make it to trial.
And of course, look, I say all of this as if Republicans are actually looking for logic. They're not. If this was a Democratic administration and the AG nominee did even half, even a tenth of what Matt Gaetz is accused of doing, Republicans would call for a fucking revolution to get that report released. Do not be swayed by these Trump-fawning Republicans pretending that suddenly their sole focus is on the norms outlining how a committee functions. Give me a break. The only thing more disgusting than the prospect of Matt Gaetz becoming AG is the fact that these Republicans are sacrificing every last shred of their dignity by defending someone who they wouldn't leave their drink next to at a bar. So let's not forget, there is precedent to release this report. There is an appetite, even among Republicans, to release this report. And if and when this report does get released, even if it's leaked, do you really want to be the one Republican who went on record trying to bury what it'll eventually reveal? Because it certainly seems like the kind of thing that the internet won't forget anytime soon. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.